Good evening. I'm hereby calling to order the June 11, 2018 meeting of the Mayfield Heights City Council. May I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. Ballestria?
Present.
Mr. DeJohn?
Here.
Mrs. Finney?
Here.
Mr. Mano?
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Here.
Mrs. Snyder?
Here.
Mrs. Tressi?
Here.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome everyone this evening. First on our agenda is approval of the minutes from our last meeting on May 30th, 2018. Trust everyone had time to read them over. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular council meeting on May 30th, 2018? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mr. Ballestria. Are there any suggested changes, amendments, or deletions to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the minutes are written as approved. Next on the agenda are correspondence and announcements. Does any member of council have any correspondence or announcements? Seeing none, we will move to reports of officers, starting with the mayor. Mayor DeSica.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening. Last Tuesday, I had the pleasure of attending the CATS Academy graduation, which is the Citizens Academy for teen students, which saw 12 students complete the training and receive their diplomas. The police department does a great job with these kids. The CATS Academy presents a valuable opportunity for students to see how the police department operates and to become advocates for the police department in our community. And I saw some of the photos that they took during the training, and I think the officers had more fun than the students during the training. But look, the students all appreciated what they learned, and they had a great time also. You may have noticed some additional work going on at Golden Gate as they prepare landscape improvements throughout the plaza. And they also are preparing, as everyone knows, the Chick-fil-A site. So these landscape improvements were recommended by the Planning Commission and the Architectural Board of Review. And lastly, I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of Sam Orteca. Sam was a devoted husband, father, and grandfather. He was active in a number of organizations around town and a member of our Board of Zoning Appeals since January 2008. We appreciate his time and efforts. His commitment and dedication through the years have helped Mayfield Heights grow and progress toward the future. Sam's presence will be greatly missed, and our thoughts and prayers are with his family. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor, Mr. DeJohn?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Mayor, I did get a question about the Chick-fil-A project. I was asked, it seems to be halted. There hasn't been any trucks there, anybody working there. So they were wondering if, what's happening there.
Well, the work that's going on now has just been site improvements. They haven't actually started the actual construction yet. So I'm not sure what the exact timeline is to the beginning. Tom, I'm not sure if you have any update on that, when they're going to break ground for the actual building, but I believe they are done with the site improvements.
Yeah, Mayor, you're right. The site improvements are complete. They left the pad for Chick-fil-A to begin, and in the next week or two, you should see that coming out of the ground. They have all their approvals. They paid for their permit, and the way I see it is very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the mayor? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Director of Law, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no reports this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Are there any questions for Mr. Murphy? Director of Finance, Mr. Tribby.
As you know, we have two note ordinances on the agenda tonight and also a supplemental appropriation. We'll discuss those when they come up.
Thank you, Mr. Tribby. Are there any questions for Mr. Tribby? Next on our agenda are reports of committees, commissions, and boards. We'll begin with the Building Committee. Mrs. Snyder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no report.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyder. Are there any questions for Mrs. Snyder? Next, Finance and Audit Committee. Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. I have no report.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Seeing none, we'll move on to Legislative Committee. Mrs. Teresi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report.
Thank you, Mrs. Teresi. Are there any questions for Mrs. Teresi? Next, Public Works and Service Committee. Mr. Balestria.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Public Works Committee met today. We discussed ordinance 2018-19, which is on the agenda, and that we will be asking to place on second read. Also, we have a resolution, an ordinance, and 3 motions on the agenda as a result of the May 24th Public Works meeting, and I'll entertain any questions at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Balestria. Are there any questions of Mr. Balestria? Next, Recreation and Parks Committee, Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Silver Shooters Bocce begins this week on Tuesday, June the 12th at 11:15 a.m. The cost is $32 per person and includes a light lunch. Call 440-442-2627 to register. Don't miss out on Unity Days, scheduled for June 22nd through the 24th. Friday, June 22nd, Midway and activities will open at 5 p.m. and close at 11 p.m. The Doug Kaufman Band will be performing at the Bocce Courts and Shout at the main tent, sponsored by Eastgate Shopping Center. Saturday, June 23rd, Midway and activities will open at 4 p.m. and include Country Rain Band and at the main tent. Our Mayfield Heights Citizen of the Year, Fred Kramer, fireworks at dusk, sponsored by Golden Gate Shopping Plaza. On Sunday, June 24th, the parade will be at 1 p.m. The parade will step off from the greens of Lyndhurst Shopping Center and end at Golden Gate Plaza. After the parade, join us in the park for Midway and activities until 7 p.m. The Chardon Polka Band will be playing at main tent, and the grand prize drawing will be at 6:45. Early bird wristbands are now on sale at City Hall and Dragapool. The Park and Recreation Commission will be selling beer, wine, hamburgers, and hot dogs. Additionally, local food vendors include Arabiatas, Corbo's, Master Pizza, Piccolo, and new this year, Chick-fil-A, Moe's Southwest Grill, and Trevi Catering. Raffle tickets can be purchased at City Hall, Dragapool, or at the event all weekend. Books of 6 for $5. First prize will be $3,000 donated by DeSico and Sons Funeral Home, Elk and Elk, Fidelity Group, First Energy, Hillcrest Hospital, Ord Property. Second prize, $1,000 donated by State Industrial Products. Third prize, overnight stay at Glidden House and $500 in American Express gift cards donated by Glidden House and Great Lakes Billing and the Shaughnessy family. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. Are there any questions for Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Mano, there is a rumor going around, which I clarified with Mr. Ward, about being in the parade with a vintage car, and I just wanted everybody to know that there's no fee to be in the parade with a vintage car.
Thank you for that. I know we had discussed that at the Park and Rec meeting, but I was never aware there was any fees involved, so
There's
it's
a
good
rumor
to get
going
that
around
out
the city, and some people had
Really?
elected not to be in the parade, and so I just wanted
Thanks
to
for pointing
squelch
that out. We talked about, pardon me?
I'm sorry, Madam President. I don't want to
Go ahead,
talk.
please.
There's no fee for any entrant
That's what
at
I
all,
say.
whether it's an antique car or any entrant, right? Okay.
All right.
It's good news now. We're back to the greens, right?
Yep.
That's
Yep.
great.
Thanks, Bob.
Any other questions for Mr. Mano? Seeing none, we'll move on to Safety and Transportation. Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. I gave a report last week regarding the purchase of the new fire truck. When that comes up this evening, we'll have Chief Elliott come up and answer any questions you may have regarding that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Any questions for Mr. DeJohn? Next, Board of Zoning Appeals, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. The Board of Zoning Appeals will meet tomorrow at 7 p.m. here in council chambers. There is one item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any questions to Mrs. Sabetta? Next, we'll move on to Planning Commission, Mr. Balestria.
Thank you. The Planning Commission did not meet due to lack of agenda, therefore I have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Balestria. Any questions to Mr. Balestria? Seeing none, we'll move on to our public portion. Pursuant to City Code, each person will be allowed 5 minutes to speak, with a maximum of 30 minutes allotted for the entire public portion. Although it is not a time for public debate, this is your opportunity to address council with your concerns. Please know that no personal attacks or comments will be allowed. Also, if you are here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. If you would like to be heard this evening, please raise your hand and be recognized and approach the podium and state your name and address for the record. It is now 7:12. I will open the public portion. Bob.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob McHugh. I live at 1575 Woodrow Avenue. I'm over here by Golden Gate. I've sent an email to the entire council, and I included the mayor today in regards to the cell tower that ODOT wants to build basically in my backyard. I understand it's ODOT property and that they can do what they want there, but I feel as though maybe the city needs to step up and see if there's something we can do. I added to my email today the names and phone numbers and emails of all of our state representatives, our senator, governors, and it is a election year, meaning I think putting a little pressure might actually help. Now, I have received some feedback from a couple of the council members who do agree that they don't want it there any more than I do. I believe it's an eyesore. They've mentioned they're going to landscape it. You can't landscape 440 feet in the air. It's just not something I think is good for our city. I've read that it can be bad for my home value. I've read it can be bad for medical reasons, things like that. And because of the feedback I've gotten from my friends in the neighborhood and from the few I've received feedback from the council, I really think there's maybe, as a whole, the residents can do something, send emails, make phone calls. I talked with Mr. Murphy today, who said he'd look into legal aspects of it to see what we can do, if anything at all. So I came in today just to kind of make you guys aware of the concerns I have, and again with some of my friends in the neighborhood, and again from what I've heard from you guys. Like I said, I do appreciate the responses I have gotten, and I just kind of want you to know I'm going to keep pushing until I can, kind of find out what we can or cannot do in this matter. Again, it's basically in my backyard. I bought that house a year ago. I would not have bought that house had I known there was a 450-foot tower planning to be put behind it. It's just not something I want in my neighborhood. So, again, I just wanted to thank you guys for listening. I do appreciate the time you have provided. And again, I'll probably follow up with emails down the road. I do plan on sending emails and making phone calls, and I really hope that you guys will back the city and the residents on this as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you for doing your homework.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Anybody else like to be heard this evening?
Madam Chairman,
Mrs. Teresi,
may I respond to Mr. McHugh's comment?
please.
Thank you. Mr. McHugh, today I called District 12, which is ODOT here in Cleveland, and I was referred to Wendy Snyder at ODOT's corporate office, and she gave me a whole synopsis of this tower that's 450 feet. Can I read this, or?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
It's all about this tower. She said that it's not really ODOT's project. It is the McKay brothers who are putting the tower up on ODOT's right-of-way. This tower has to be this tall because it's sending, this is not my opinion, I'm just giving you exactly what she said verbatim. The tower has to be this tall because it is sending a signal from here to Kelly's Island, which is the line of sight for the tower. They looked at all different sites before they came to Mayfield Heights, that they met with the mayor, she said, and 6 other people about this, but that location was the only one that had a clear sight line to Kelly's Island. and it's all via microwave, whatever that means. She said they looked hard to find another location that meets the same criteria, and couldn't do that no matter where they went. She also knows that there'll be cell information that they'll be adding to this tower, and I guess in the meeting that they had here in the city, we have a tower in the back and it's really overloaded, so we would be able to put some of that apparatus on that tower as well. She said they are going to, Mayfield Heights told the McKay brothers that they wanted it to be, you know, some beautification project, so they're gonna put a fence around it, and then they're going to do some landscaping for the city in that area. And she said regarding interference with the internet or cell service for residents, she said that there will be no interference, that this tower has totally different technology. It actually could improve cell companies putting their information on this tower. And many of the communication companies that offer cell service are probably looking to expand their coverage, and they would add it to this tower. She said this tower would work with the state's radio system for first responders as well. And let's see, the tower is not radioactive. It's not that kind of tower. There are no health risks to this type of tower. Safety concerns, the tower is telescoping, and it has a sensor in it so that it would never topple over. It can judge the rate of speed of the cars coming down, and even in a storm or any other way, it's not going to topple over either way. It's telescoping, so it's going to come down. It'll be surrounded by a fence, and it is a breakaway tower that will not topple over. The federal government makes tower companies do their due diligence, so they had to go to the federal government. They had to work with the FCC and aviation in order just to get this tower approved to erect, and then they have to go back to ODOT, who has even more stringent rules than the federal government. I can give you her name or her email address, and you can feel free to reach out to her. I wanted to, you know, I read your email. I wanted to know more about it myself. So this, and I have a copy if you'd like my notes. But thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Teresi. Mrs. Snyder?
Maybe this is to the mayor, I'm not sure. There's absolutely no other area, like somewhere around Landerbrook, closer to the freeway, not in someone's backyard, that this could go. Like, you know, that area off over the bridge, by the, you know, empty area there's nothing there. I mean, is there any other possible area?
When they came to us, just as Mrs. Teresi said, this was the best possible spot for line of sight, and it actually goes from New York City to here. Actually, there's stops along the line from New York City. I believe there's one in Clarendon, then here, then Kelly's Island. So it's a relay, basically, of financial information. Excuse me. And for it to be on the correct line, that would be the best spot for them. Now, is there a possibility that it could go anywhere else? According to when we had the meeting with them, no. But as this thing evolves, and as we talk, and as residents raise concerns, and as we all learn more about it, who knows what could happen.
Mayor,
Thank
is
you.
there, maybe we could put this information on our channel so people be aware of it? You know, I think Mr. McHugh provided us with several addresses and emails, which was a great idea.
Yeah, we were, yeah, we can do that, definitely. And Mr. Murphy and I are still in the process of kind of learning what we can do and can't do, or, you know, where we go from here.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Mr. DeJohn?
Mayor, you don't happen to know, in these type of situations, so it's the state land. Is this company leasing the land from the state? Is that how this
I would be
works?
willing, I don't know for sure the financial, you know, deal, but I'm pretty sure they're probably leasing it from them, yeah.
I'd kind of like to know that, Mr. Murphy, when we talked about this in our meeting earlier, so thank you.
That's public right-of-way for the interstate, so I would be shocked if they were going to transfer title. It's going to be a lease. It'll be a ground lease for the tower. There's no doubt in my mind. They just don't alienate property that they buy for interstates.
Thank you. I think now we'll close the public portion at 7:22. And if we have anything further to discuss on that, we'll wait till we get to that part of the agenda. We'll move on now to resolutions. Will we begin with Resolution 2018-39? Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-39, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Sutphin Corporation for a pumper truck and ancillary equipment for the Division of Fire and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Teresi, seconded by Mr. Mano. Discussion? Mr. DeJohn, did you have something to add?
No, other than I gave the report last week. Chief Elliott, do you have anything to add regarding this? It's needed, and it's well overdue.
Good evening, City Administration, members of Council. Councilman DeJohn did give a report at the last Council meeting from the Safety Committee meeting that happened on May 16th in support of this new engine. Just to kind of give you a brief synopsis of this. This is a 1989 pumper truck that we've had served the city well. It's been in good working order. It's just getting kind of cost effective now not to keep it in the service. According to the NFPA standards, a pumper truck beyond the age of 25 years should be retired. This will be up on 30 years old by the time we receive the new truck. We put together a committee. We've been planning this for several years. We've talked to the mayor and finance director for the last several years to prepare for this purchase, so we just didn't come shooting from the hip on this last minute. We've been kind of planning on this need of this apparatus. So we did put together a committee, an apparatus committee of 4 personnel, lieutenant, captain, and 2 firefighters to evaluate the different companies, to look at their service, look at their track record, go around to the different municipalities that have different trucks. And they've done a lot of work and research to come up with the recommendations that I brought forward to you today. We plan at this time to move the frontline fire engine, which is a 2004 E1, to the backup status, which is well within the NFPA standards of 15 years of frontline. One of the reasons why we really need to consider moving forward on this is just the safety aspects of these apparatuses. There's just the technology moving forward on the safety that it provides our personnel when they're responding to and returning from emergencies is pretty drastic. So this 1989 truck that we're looking to replace only has lap belts. I mean, we haven't had lap belts in cars since 1970, and we have fire engines that have that right now. So we really need to move forward to keeping our firefighters safe, to provide our residents with the latest technology in fire engines, and I hope that you guys approve this purchase to move forward on it, and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Belistria?
Chief, the one that's on backup now, we have a second engine that's on backup now?
So the 1989 is backup.
And then what happens to that engine? Do we permanently retire that, or is that something that we can put on the market as resale, or would it be unsafe to do something like that?
No, so that's something that I've looked into a little bit. I was a little bit surprised when I looked into this a little bit, thinking we could get something out of it. And I think you'd be kind of shocked at what we will get out of it at the end of the day. But we can resell that on GovDeals, on an agency like that. we're not gonna get anything near that, what you think that the fair value of that vehicle is. I could put more money into that truck today than what we can get out of it if we sold it. So, but we will do our due diligence, in trying to sell it, trying to, they won't take it, and nobody will take it in for a trade. It's just 30 years old. The work that would need to go into it to bring it up to today's standards is just, but it could be a valuable vehicle for somebody that maybe somewhere in a rural community
That's what I was thinking.
just has no financial, where they have nothing now, and this could be put them in to have some protection, you know. So
Or a volunteer department.
exactly.
Like that.
So that's where we would be looking at it at this point. But we would look at to use an auction type site and sell it on an auction type site, which is right now we use like an agency like Gov Deals.
Thanks, Chief.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, roll call please, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Trussy?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2018-39 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2018-40. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-40, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a letter of intent with Gardner to start an investment-grade audit and engineering necessary to prepare a proposal to engineer, design, and implement an energy-based performance solution at the city facilities and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Trussy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Discussion. Mr. DeJohn?
Okay, I was looking, and I sat in this public works meeting, and I was looking over the contract that the cities has with this letter of intent, and they're only giving us 8 days between the studying of the project, which I think they've already began studying the project because I saw 2 Gardner trucks here today. You know, it's only giving us about 8 days between the time they approve or come up with their recommendations and the time we have to decide what we're going to do. It's really not giving us that much time. And I don't know if Mr. Balestria can remind me, I thought they said that we can pick and choose what we want to do out of this study. So how can you really intelligently look at this in 8 days and pick and choose what we want to do in it? So I don't really agree with this letter of an intent. And I don't know what else everybody else is thinking, but I just don't disagree with it. Do
Mayor?
agree with it.
Do you have anything you'd like to say?
They were here working on the system today. They were.
Anybody else? Mr. Mano?
When we first discussed this situation with them, I believe I had asked whether or not a gas well could be part of that study. Can that be incorporated or included in this?
Mayor?
I mean, if we're looking at all forms of energy, why not?
Well, I think this audit is to look at just at the systems we have in place right now, and how to improve the efficiency and bring the system, the current system we have, up to its best performance. Can we add a gas well at some point? I'm sure we could, but I don't know if it's part. I don't know if it should be part of this agreement itself, because I don't think it is in the same purview as what they're going to do here. I don't know, Mike, if you have any.
Yeah, I can
I'm
maybe
sorry.
dovetail onto that. Madam
Mr.
Chairman.
Belestria, please.
The audit will cost approximately $23,000. You see that in the contract. And the HVAC estimate that we talked about in the Public Works meeting, council's copied on the minutes, is going to be about, they're estimating about $250,000. With the grant from NOPEC, the city receives about $70,000. The city could receive about $70,000 per year. And we're in the second year, so we can tap those monies that we didn't use last year and then going forward. So we could conceivably receive $210,000 to do this project, of which the cost of the city would only be $40,000. After that, I mean, there would still be grant money available in successive years that you can tap into any time for future projects that you want to determine. But I think when Mr. Giordano and I met at the meeting, we determined that, you know, with the estimated amount that it would take to do this project and the cost efficiency that we might save over the years, it was best to use all 3 years of that grant money and put it towards, you know, offsetting $250,000 in cost.
Mr. Bellstreet, did the committee both approve? Did both of you approve this to come to council?
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Mayor?
if I could just address Mr. DeJohn real quick.
Please.
The presentation of recommendation, the presentation of recommendations from Gardner will be 7/28 to 8/6. So you're going to have about a month until council approves. So the recommendation is going to be made 7/28 to 8/6, and then the final contract and scope of work will be 8/15, and then council will approve the 8/23. So we have a little bit longer timeline to sift through what they give us and maybe make changes if we wanted to.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. DeJohn, I think Mrs. Teresi's been raising her hand. Can we
That's
please
fine.
have her speak?
Sorry.
Sorry, you've had several turns.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I just have, I just want to be clear on just something. So this is with a grant, but what if we don't get the grant after we do the letter of intent? That's the first part of my question. And the second part of my question is, in 2017, we did a contract with Gardner. I know it's for service, it's monthly service, to go over all of our systems. Have they gone through, I mean, I pulled the contract and it has all of the schedules and general like startup procedures and things of that nature. Is that where they determined that we need an HVAC system or chilling, you know, the chilling systems to be repaired or replaced? Is that how they did that, by their contracts and being here every month or week or however they come?
Madam
Mayor?
President. Yeah, their work that they continue to do here, work on our system, and I don't know if you remember, what was it, a couple years ago, if you remember, we talked about some improvements that they saw back then. So they're very familiar with our system now, working with our system. They've noticed, you know, that this audit would be valuable to us, especially since we could pay for it with NOPEC money. So, I mean, them being here, being involved with our system, finding out, you know, all the little nuances or all the little things that are wrong, definitely wrong with our system. They've had a chance to work with it and figure it out. So,
And what if we don't get the grant?
the grant we already have.
Oh,
Yeah.
you said,
Yeah.
okay, the way Mr. Bellstray mentioned it, I thought it wasn't totally approved yet, but it is approved.
Mr. Bellstreet?
Yeah, just to further maybe make the council aware, NOPEC is requiring this audit in order to release those funds. So if we don't do anything as far as having this type of audit, then we won't be able to use those monies for any type of improvement. So they are requiring to see the audit. So this is a more intense, more extensive type audit where they're going to go in and really look at the systems. What Gardner did previously was, what was explained to us, was more superficial. Just trying to get some ideas of where there could be some cost savings within the city. Now this is going to be an in-depth study.
Thank you, Mr. Bellstreet. I think it's isn't this something we've been talking about doing for many years? So I think it's probably time I really look at it. Anyone else? Mrs. Snyder?
They said that the presentation will be in July, but we're on recess then, so will we have this at the special meeting information by that meeting in July?
Mayor? We don't know yet.
I mean, because there's, yeah.
It's an estimated timeline too.
Right. And we'll figure out at the time when they give us the information, you know, who we have to get together and when. We'll-
Okay, thank you.
Mr. DeJohn?
So, Mr. Balestri, you think we got enough time to evaluate this?
I
when
think
we-
so.
Okay.
I think.
I just want to make sure we have enough time. I don't like to rush.
Oh, yeah.
Things this expensive, so. And, you know, Mrs. Finney, yes, I did recommend it to council without seeing the letter of intent. So,
Okay.
yes, I did elect it.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. Roll call, please, Lisa.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes,
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes, Resolution 2018-40 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2018-41. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-41, a resolution authorizing the Director of Finance to advance funds in accordance with amounts listed in ordinance number 2018-13. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Snyder?
yes,
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Mr. Tribby, I know we had changed it, if everyone noticed. It wasn't transfer, it was advance. I think we all got that notice. Mr. Tribby, you have anything you'd like to add?
No, the transfer was a typo. It's in advance. What this really is an interfund loan. We'll advance funds from the general fund to the equipment fund, and then you can appropriate monies for the VACOL truck and the street sweeper. Once the regional sewer district reimburses us the funds, then the monies will be advanced back to the general fund.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Trivy? Roll call, please, Lisa.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Balistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
yes,
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2018-41 has been adopted. Next on our agenda are ordinances. We'll start with ordinance 2018-19. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2018-19, an ordinance enacting Chapter 910 of the Codified Ordinances of the City titled Small Cell Facilities and Wireless Support Structures and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to place ordinance 2018-19 on second reading?
Move.
Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Balistria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
yes,
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Ordinance 2018-19 will be on second reading. Next is ordinance 2018-20. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2018-20, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $535,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of acquiring a fire engine together with related apparatus and equipment for use by the city's fire department and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Roll call, please, on the motion to suspend.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
yes,
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mr. Balistria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria. Second. Seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Discussion? I know again, it was a typo. It was supposed to be service department, not fire department, as it read.
That's the next one.
Oh, that's the next one? Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I have that too. Oh, I thought they were both of them, I'm sorry. So this is for the fire department, then, I'm sorry. I am changed on both. Do you have anything you'd like to add? No? Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Ordinance 2018-20 has been adopted. We'll move on to ordinance number 2018-21. Mr. Murphy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2018-21, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $215,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of acquiring a snowplow with a salt spreader, together with related apparatus and equipment for use by the city's service department, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call, please, on the motion to suspend.
Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mr. Balestria. I think we discussed this quite a bit. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Balestria?
Now, originally, the budget amount was 235, and the committee recommended up to 235, and the quotes came in anticipating about 215,000, so that's what you see before you this evening.
Thank you. Anything else? Mrs. Teresi?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Are we replacing equipment or just adding to our equipment?
This is for the new truck. That will be on motion A this evening.
So we're getting a new truck.
Yes,
we have to-
yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Anything else? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes, ordinance 2018-21 has been adopted. Next is ordinance 2018-22. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2018-22, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2018-13, the appropriation expenditures of the City of Mayfield Heights, State of Ohio, for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2018. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call, please, on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Mr. Tribby, anything you'd like to add?
By appropriating the funds, you will allow us to purchase all the items we talked about, the fire truck, the snowplow, the street sweeper, VACOL, and to advance the funds.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just a little bit of out of order, but that's okay. Actually, the motions are to approve, so we're approving the funds before we approve the purchase, but that's okay. Just so you know.
Mr. Murphy.
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, on motions, it's to advertise for the purchase of, for bids for the truck and for the vac truck and the street sweeper.
Right.
We're approving right now to transfer those funds before we've approved the purchase.
Actually, you're talking
Yeah.
about issuing notes to finance that purchase, so that by the time the purchase is ready to be made, you'll have the money in
Yeah,
hand.
I understand.
Right, Mr. Trivy?
Right, you'll have the money in hand, but you still have to officially appropriate the funds in order to sign contracts.
I understand.
It's like the
You need
chicken
the
or the
money
egg
first.
thing, it all happens
Yeah.
at the same time, you know.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Lisa.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes, ordinance 2018-22 has been adopted. Next, we'd like to have a motion to adjourn to executive session regarding union contracts. Moved by Mrs. Sabata. Seconded by Mr. Balestria. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will now adjourn to
Excuse me.
executive session, and we will be back shortly.
Donna?
Yes.
I'm sorry, you need a roll call.
Oh, we do?
motion.
I'm sorry. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes, I
Mr.
apologize. We
Finney?
now will adjourn to executive session. Yes,
Can
Mr.
can I
Balestria.
ask for, just, can we finish the agenda that's on before us with the motions before we adjourn? Since I have Mr. Fenaro here.
That would,
Uh,
that would be
if-
fine.
if answer
Would
any
you like to
questions.
make a motion
I would-
to
I would.
deviate from the agenda? Do
Deviate from the agenda and take the motions up at this time.
we have a second? Mr. DeJohn? Can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Balestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. We will now move on to motions, and we will just bypass the next two ordinances. So we will begin with motion A, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Motion to authorize preparing specifications and advertising for bids for a 2.5-ton truck for the service department.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mr. DeJohn. I think we discussed this. So, any other further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion A stands approved. Motion B, Mr. Murphy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Motion to advertise for rock salt bids.
Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. I don't think there's really much discussion for this. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is approved. Hopefully we won't need that for a while. Next, we'll move on to motion C, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Motion to prepare specifications and advertise for bids for a vac truck and street sweeper. Reimbursement will be from the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District Stormwater Funds.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Balestria. I know Mr. Tribby just mentioned this. Will be reimbursed from the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. Any further questions?
Madam
Mr. DeJohn?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Bob.
Should I let the chairman go first?
No, go
This
ahead.
may be used equipment, by the way. I just wanted to let the council know. that
Used
this may
equipment.
be Used equipment.
Mr. Balestria?
Yeah, the city has a Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District grant available to them by the end of the year, approximating $600,000 for use in stormwater projects. The one project that the service directors recommended and city engineer was the Peeper Hollow flooding issue project, and the engineer estimated a cost to the committee of about $126,000. That would be utilizing the grant monies in that amount. With about $470,000 left in the grant, the committee requested that Mr. Fernald and Mr. Gerson check into using those funds for some equipment that the service department was requesting, that being a vac truck. A vac truck would be a truck that would go around the city and suck out our drains, our storm drains out at the streets, and also for a street sweeper, which Mr. Fernando stated that probably be used maybe 4 times a year to sweep the city. The conclusion was, yes, we could use the grant money since the vehicles are used for stormwater maintenance. Therefore, the motion is before you this evening to use that grant money as it's available from the sewer district towards the purchase of these vehicles.
Thank you, Mr. Balestria. I think that would be very appreciated, since I would say probably 50% of my phone calls have to do with flooding. And I think the people in Mayfield Village right there on Bonneview might appreciate this also. Mrs. Teresi?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Were we going to use some of this money for the retention basin that was going to be at Oakville?
That was a, can I answer that question?
Please.
Yeah, that was be a future determination, a future project. We discussed as a committee that since this money is available to us today and these vehicles were in need of repair or replacement, while the money was available, we would go ahead and purchase these vehicles. Who knows, you know, from year to year whether grant money is available or not, but that would be probably one of the major projects we would look at going forward into next year, but not for this year.
And do we have a vac truck right now?
We have an old, we had an old vac truck, but we don't anymore, right?
No, we don't.
We don't.
I thought years
Street
ago we had
sweepers
one.
and the street sweeper is in dire need of repair.
Mayor, did you have something?
Yeah, we talked about the retention basin at Oakville, and it was by council's request that we took that out of the project, because at that time it was decided that council didn't want to use those funds for that retention basin at that time.
Thank you. Mr. DeJohn, do you have something?
No, other than right now the county sweeps out or sucks out our drains and our sewers, and we have to wait for them to do that, and you know, it's on a first come, first served basis. So that's why we see the need for this truck.
There is
And we do pay
believe
for
me, a
that.
big need for this truck. Mrs. Snyder, do you have something to add?
Just real quick, the Peeper Hollow project, is that gonna cover the cost of that? Cause it just seems like it's a bigger project.
The engineer's estimated cost, like I said, was $126,000. The house will be demolished. And then the way Mr. Gerson described the project was that they would alter the embankment. So if the water got high enough, it would create a floodplain into the yard where the home was, not where the house is itself, but into the yard. And then that water would eventually just flow back into the stream. And we can't alter the stream at all because then that would require an Army of Corps of Engineers permit. So they're not going to alter the size and shape of the stream, but just alter the embankment. So those waters would flood over instead of trying to go through that drain, which we understand floods the middle school because the water does run under the middle school. And then they do have some issues over at Stone Creek as well, with the water going that way before it goes down into the river. So,
All right.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe myself it's a necessity, since for some reason I'm the one that always gets the phone calls every time it rains at 11, 12 at night. I actually bought boots to go to the Peeper Hollow. That's how many times I've been there. I think you've been there with me a few times, Mrs. Snyder. Roll call, please, Lisa. Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion C is approved. And now I think we will ask for a motion to go into executive. Do we have to ask for another one, or are we good? Okay, we will now adjourn to executive session. Thank you.